Māori are 10% of the Auckland population, so about 150,000 Māori living in Auckland. Phil Goff, we'll start with you on this one. The Royal Commission recommended 3 dedicated Māori seats on the Auckland Council. The government rejected that. Is it time to have dedicated seats for Māori on the council?
I think it's better to have elected representation on the council than appointed representation. We have the Independent Maori Statutory Board with a limited power to vote, but it's appointed, it's not elected.
Yeah, so is that
if you're
a yes
in a democracy,
is that a yes to dedicated seats?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's 3. It needs to be proportionate to the wider population, but
that's interesting because I haven't heard that at all from you. You were saying this morning that you believe there should be dedicated Māori seats, that you're elected from the Māori roll, and you would look at that as mayor?
I think that's better than having a non-elected appointed people with voting rights on council, and we of course do that in central government. We've done it for as long as you and I have been alive. Why wouldn't you apply it? Why wouldn't you apply it?
You've been alive a little longer than I have.
Well, let's not split hairs on this.
We've both still got some here, which is good.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
So just get this clear, and you guys will get a fair crack, but this is interesting. You are saying that perhaps you would look at scrapping the Māori Statutory Board and replacing it with dedicated Māori seats to be elected by electors off the Māori roll should you be mayor?
Yeah. I can't do that. That's a statutory decision by government.
But you would advocate for it?
But if I'm asked my opinion, as you're doing now, would I rather have elected people on the council representing the Maori population or appointed people? My answer is it's got to be elected, because that's what democracy is about.
No, I think that would take us back to kind of ring-fence Māori into particular seats of their own. I want more Māori people, I want more Asian people, I want more people who look like modern Auckland serving on the council, and that's been a key part of what I've talked to people about. So
are Māori adequately represented on the Auckland Council?
No, they're not. They're not 10%.
And the solution of that is just to keep doing what we're doing?
No, the solution to that is to kind of get a mayor who can kind of connect more effectively. I've worked very closely with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei in my ward, and I think there's huge potential for us to encourage more people into council, but we've got to make council more appealing. Most people, not just Māori, don't want to stand for council because they don't see that it makes a difference. OK, I'm going to bring in another audience question now, and this one with a bit of expertise. I'm going to bring in our Māori issues correspondent, Mihi Ngārangi Forbes, because there's another significant issue here about sites of cultural significance that I think Mihi wants to touch on. Kia ora, Mihi.
Kia ora, Guyan. Tēnā koutou katoa. Well, Auckland has 19 iwi who have interests in mana whenua and a number of urban authorities. We've had a bit of a ring around, and we've found that the biggest issues that for them are housing, homelessness, tiakitanga, which is caring for people and the environment. But I have one question from an iwi leader that I'd like to put to you, Phil and Vic, about significant places, and this iwi leader asks, how will you strike a balance between development and protecting the culturally significant places?
I think there does need to be protection for culturally significant places, Wāhi Tapu, for example. There needs to be that protection in place. I think in the initial attempt to do that, Council got the balance wrong.
It's exactly working with the Maori community. And to your point, Guyon, I think we need to understand what is the problem we're trying to solve and whether we have elected representatives or not. So as Mayor, I would work with you to understand what is working well and what isn't. I do believe that a number of the solutions that I'm putting forward will address some of the issues that you have, and certainly working with social or community providers to provide more support around that area is good as well.
How will that happen though? So if you've got significant, if an iwi says, yes, this is significant to us, but you want to develop the area, how will you make that happen? Because of the unitary plan has done away with the list of significant places.
Yeah, that's right. And so there was the list put forwards, and then the council said no. And I think that they have 2 very binary outcomes, and that's not the answer we're looking for. So we need to go back and say, well, if it's not this full list, which ones are they? And then how do we investigate that indeed that they are sites of significance? Because council also needs to turn to the public and say, we must protect these these sites.
And we didn't do enough work to actually clarify what those 3,200 sites of value were. Now, there's two categories, right? There's actually sites of historic significance. In fact, we increased those from about 60 by 14. But the large number, the 3,000, we didn't do the work. Much like the pre-1944 character overlays, we didn't put the time and effort in council to actually have meaningful conversations with people. So we haven't done our job, and that's what I'll do.
If I can bring you in here, and I've read your book. I haven't read all of it, actually, to be honest.
Thank you.
I did read the section.
Thanks for at least getting through it.
I did read the section on this, though. You seem to think that this whole idea of cultural consultation around these issues is a bit of a rort. I'll quote you: the current procedures are little more than a very nice compensation stream and the ability to hold up any development without any real cultural justification.
You're taking that a little out of context.
He's reading it.
It's got quote marks around it. You only had 3 pages on this. I read your book and it's got small print and it's, it's quite... Hold your book up. It's pretty small, isn't it?
It's a great book, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty small. Fantastic. So I read those 3 pages on that.
So it's a good portion. No, the issue is that, unfortunately, right now, if a person wants to develop their property, even just build a garage, and they have to have a consultation, that person can delay them for as long as they like, and they could charge them for as much as they want.
Some of the iwi leaders are running around Auckland holding up people from building garages?
Well, yes, unfortunately, that is happening, and we need to stop it.
Can you give me an example of that happening?
Well, I've had people talk to me about different situations that
and they said, I couldn't build my garage because the local iwi leader said it was
this is not made up, and even the iwi know that it's happening, and they're actually, it's making it difficult for the rest of the iwi, because you have some individuals who are saying, look, give me $50,000 and then I'll sign off on that, and that's not the right thing.
Hang on, that's pretty serious. That's
what's happening.
You're talking about, what, bribery?
No, I'm not talking about bribery. They're saying that's what it's going to cost for me to approve this site. And that needs to stop. We actually have to have some structure. All I'm saying is we have to have structure. And look, what's happened is they're actually going to, council's taking it all away. And I'm saying, no, don't take it away. Just put some structure. We need to have things. We need to stop these knee-jerk reactions and going too far or taking everything away. We need to balance it. And to balance it is by saying, let's put some structure in there. Let's put some time delays on there, to some time frames on things so that people can move forward and it can be legitimate. And the most important thing is that the site has to have a cultural significance, not just we think it does or we guess it does.
Okay, let's come back to brass tacks, if you like. A lot of Māori in the city aren't doing that well economically. Some big problems there, social problems, unemployment. Do you have a commitment, Vic Crone, to the Southern Initiative?
To initiatives in the South?
No,
absolutely.
The Southern Initiative.
I have some concerns around how it's being delivered and the progress around it. The intent of it, absolutely, and I've got some other ideas, actually, on how we can accelerate progress in the South.
Southern Initiative seems to have gone off the radar. Yep. I mean, it was this big idea. They had all these targets. We're going to hold Māori unemployment rates to similar to other ethnicities. We're going to lift the rate of home ownership, even reduce the amount of smoking. It had some real aspirational goals in there. Phil Goff, what would you do to add momentum to those initiatives that looked pretty good on paper in the Auckland plan, but really seem to have fallen off the radar?
Yeah, I think I've visited the Southern Initiative. I think they're doing some things that are really good. I think there are things that they need to be doing better. But the principle behind it is this, and it's one that I support strongly. A guy that I know that works in the South, and he's quite prominent in education, he said, Auckland's like a V6 car, but it's only firing on 5 cylinders. And the 6th cylinder is South Auckland and the low educational achievement levels in that part of the city. Now, this is something that council needs to be involved in, but again, can't drive. It's about education, it's about housing, it's about health.
We have no growth plan. It's the same play, though.
When I say
the government's fault,
when I say
the government's fault.
That the council can't drive it, is that the resources aren't there in the levels that we need. It's a wider educational, health and housing issue. But council should be a partner with central government to make sure that we are addressing
quickly to you,
that critical
and then
problem.
I'm going to come to Mark Thomas.
Yeah, it needs to be broader than government. There are some very good initiatives. So Comet, led by council, is actually doing a good job in the education space. You've got ARA, which is a combination of not just local council but government and the employees and industry around the South Auckland area in terms of transitioning students into roles.
But it's so good now, Vic Crone. Why are we still getting the same numbers?
Because they don't have enough money behind them to make an impact at scale. And that's what we need to do. We need to take some of these initiatives and garner government government and council and social investors, which is behind a lot of these initiatives, and power them forwards.
Okay,
they will do way better than anything the government or council come up with.
This question to you, because I wonder whether we have two Aucklands in this respect. If you go into the schools, take Aorere College in Papatoetoe, in 2015 their roll was 1,483, right? Pākehā students, 1%. So about 15 Pākehā kids at that school. Sir Edmund Hillary Collegiate in Otara, 507 students on the roll. I looked at the ERO report last night, 0 Pākehā. It might be a couple, but in terms of their actual role on ERO roll, no Pākehā kids at all. Why?
Well, that's the changing face of Auckland, and it's not two Aucklands.
No, but there's 20% of the population in Otara Papatoetoe Community Board are Pākehās.
Sure.
So the Pākehās are there. The Pākehā, I know it's Pākehā, singular. They're not going to those schools.
So the answer is, what's council's role in this? And the Southern Initiative is very well conceived, but after 5 years of that, 3 different leaders, it's not delivering actually what council can do. What we're trying to do effectively is compete with government, and we're ending up wasting resources and not improving actually some of the core infrastructure and some of the things that would make a meaningful difference.
I guess I'm asking a simple question. Is this a segregated city?
No, it's not. What it is
when you've got no white children in those schools,
sure.
It is a segregated city, isn't it?
Well, is it? Is that? Are we talking about where people are choosing to live, or are we talking about someone's view? Someone's view of where they should live.
Well, you guys tell me then why we don't have any Pākehā kids in these schools.
The issue is, what's council's role in this? Even if we think that the argument that you're proposing is a problem, what's our role here?
Well,
so part of the role is more affordable housing, better council facilities locally.
Phil Goff thinks it's a problem. I'll come to you, but John first.
What question are we on right now?
Segregation in the city.
Segregation. Look, let me tell you what happens in South Auckland. I mean, as far as schools, why Pākehā want to go to different schools and all, because parents want their children to go to better schools. But this is what's happening in South Auckland.
But they're good schools, though.
But this is what's happening. This is what's happening in South Auckland. You know, as Auckland has got more and more expensive, we pushed people, the less fortunate people, out into the outer suburbs. Now, when you push people further and further and further away, you're actually pushing them further away from their job. You know, you have families where you have a mother who actually takes care of the kids, but they can work part-time. Or one person can work part-time, the other works full-time. But they can no longer work part-time because it takes an hour and a half to get through the congestion, to get a job, to work for 3 hours, an hour and a half back. So they can't work. So we're changing the culture of Auckland. We're changing the society. In 10 years from now, you're going to have grandparents leave Auckland because they can't afford to live here anymore. They're not going to be spending time with their children.
We're coming off topic a little bit here.
Well, it's about what's happening.
Phil. I'm going to quickly take Vic and then you.
Okay. So we absolutely have issues. And so I'm just going to speak from somebody in terms of an executive in technology and business who has experienced a bit of diversity, nothing like what either the Maori Pacific or Asian community have experienced in Auckland, which is an increasing alienation. And I do think that the Mayor of Auckland has a role to play in championing a city that is more inclusive and more compassionate. And as I said, I've only had a little dash of the taste of what diversity can look like from the negative side. I mean, you look standing here, you look at our council, we have no ethnic representation on that.
We're pretty right here this morning, aren't we?
And absolutely, I do think the Mayor plays a role in the way they lead, they behave, and they bring communities together.
We want to get to transport, so let's have a final word on this.
Okay, we definitely need an inclusive city. My vision for Auckland is not about a city that is divided into gated communities and people that are living in substandard conditions. My kids went to one of those South Auckland schools. It's a Decile 1 school, Papakura. I don't think that it does its duty by the students that go there. We have to do more in that area. We have to speak. I would have to speak as a mayor.
The schools aren't doing their duty.
No, I think we are not getting the quality that we need in some of those schools, and the school that I instanced is one of them. Other of those schools, Aorere, you mentioned, is doing a really good job. It's my wife's old school. I know the South Auckland schools. I know the problems that exist there, and the way that we'll solve that is a mayor that speaks up for the city, but working with government, working with the corporate sector, working with the NGOs.